Go to California Democratic Congressman Khanna on all of that. Congressman, always great to see you. I was thinking also, some of the books, you're very thoughtful when you address some of these big issues, but in Dignity in a Digital Age, making tech work for all of us, one of the things you get into is making companies more responsive to the needs of people. Do you believe, I know that book was not about all companies, but what Nancy Pelosi is saying, that this is the Putin inflation, the Putin energy hike. Do you believe that that's solely the Putin war hike?
No, I mean, I think obviously it's more complex than that. I think Putin's war has exacerbated it, but you basically
is that a talking point? I always ask you, because you seem to be your own man in this stuff, and I always wonder, when I hear more and more Democrats saying that, and it's almost on cue, I'm beginning to wonder if it's part of a strategy. Blame it on Putin, blame it on Putin, blame it on Putin.
I don't think that's going to work. I mean, we can say that Putin has made it worse, but look, it's too much money chasing too few goods, and partly it's a supply chain disruption, partly it's too much money chasing production that has gone down, and I think the pandemic is to blame. I think it's much more complex than that, but what I do think we need to do is have far more aggressive government intervention. One idea, you may not agree with this, Neil, but President Reagan and President Roosevelt actually had the government buy up at the low points food and then sell it back to Americans at a low price. And that is something President Reagan did with cheese. FDR did it with many goods. I think we need to do something bold like that that's actually going to bring prices down. I mean, look, I was in my district, Maria, Lupa, who was a grocery store owner. She's saying milk is up 50%. Tortillas are up 24%. Eggs are up 50%. This is a real issue.
So it's not a transitory issue to you, and to give you credit, when this was going on early, you had your concerns and doubts about that. But the longer it seems the administration, Congressman, sticks to that, or that it's that it has nothing to do with this, isn't that a fatal move for the president and the party? Do you fear that it boomerangs and he just looks out of touch?
Yeah, I think we have to be straight with people. We need to say inflation is a real threat. It's an emergency. We need to take bold actions to deal with it. Call out the National Guard on transportation. Have the government intervene, as I suggested, to try to buy at low prices and then supply to Americans.
No, that's not a crazy idea, and I didn't mean to challenge that. I think I remember, prior presidents doing that sort of thing. Old enough to remember Reagan, FDR. This might shock you. I'm not old enough to remember that, but you're quite right. I am curious about this, though, that if you can't acknowledge a problem or your role in the problem, doesn't it invariably get back to never solving the problem then, because you're not responsible for any of it? I'm not blaming the president for all of this, but a lot of this was set in motion long before Vladimir Putin. You could say it came after the whole bust of the whole COVID experience and the boom that would inevitably follow. But to not take ownership of some of that, even getting it wrong on how long this would last, don't you think that pisses people off?
I think we should be honest. I think we should say it's complex. As you point out, part of it was COVID. Part of it is that we offshored too much production in this country and we were too dependent on supply chains. Part of it was the government spending, both under Trump and President Biden, which I still support because it helped get us out of a very difficult economic situation.
But are you for more spending then, Congressman? Because some would interpret that and say, well, you're going to take a bad thing and make it worse.
Well, I'm certainly not for more right now deficit spending, because if you pay for something, it's non-inflationary. But I'm not for, at this moment, more deficit spending that would increase excess demand. But I think we have to be honest with people, first by saying, yes, inflation is real. Yes, it's hurting folks. This is not theoretical, Neil. I mean, in my district, people are complaining we don't have baby formula. I mean, one idea is let's have massive production where you can produce baby formula safely, or let's buy it from Europe and sell here. I guess, look, people don't expect miracles, but they expect the government to understand the problem and to be as bold as we can to try to tackle it. And I think that's what the Democrats need to do headed into the midterms and to solve people's real concerns.
There are a lot of people in your party who are going after the oil companies because they're making a lot of money now. Of course, they weren't always making a lot of money. But I think raised with you in the past and others who are on both sides of this issue, how far you go at targeting an industry or how much money you think they should be taxed at for those profits. And I'm thinking again about your fine book, because it really was a good book, looking at the digital age and what we do. Now these same companies that have been high flyers have lost, what, about $1.5 trillion in market value over the last few weeks, right? So they don't have as much money to splurge. Apple's been replaced by Saudi Aramco as the most valued company on the planet. It's been kicked down the curb. Others have been really kicked down the curb. Now, if you were to extract money from them now, you'd have less money to extract because they've been financially wiped out market-wise. So is that a dangerous idea?
Well, Neil, I still rather bet on our software industry than Saudi Arabia's oil company. I think your previous guest was absolutely right that software and digitization is changing industry. But look, given the easy flow of money, one of the reasons the stock market was at the value it was is because interest rates were basically low, and the Fed probably was too long buying treasury bonds.
No doubt, but
mortgages.
you know, by trying to get money off of companies when they're making money, it can turn on a dime. Like, look at these tech companies, right? I mean, just if you look at their market worth, it's been hammered. So if you were to start taking money from them now, it would not be a good time, right?
Well, I think they should pay their fair share of tax, and they should pay some corporate tax and not pay 0% tax, and there should be a basic corporate minimum tax. But I think their situation is different.
But are you for a windfall profit tax when they're making money, a lot of money, just like the oil companies? Are you for that, and where do you draw the line?
Well, here's where the distinction is, I think, between a tech company and oil. I mean, I think oil is profiting because of a unique circumstance. There, I do think it is because of Putin's war, because we're asking Americans to say, stand with Ukraine and let's not have Russian oil. And therefore,
well, 2/3 of that oil run-up, as you know, was prior to the war, right?
Sure, but I think that the war has contributed to that, and that's what I'm saying is the reason to have a tax and give a rebate, because I don't think big oil companies should be profiting at a time of war, and that is different, in my view, than other industries that may just have high margins overall, but they're not taking advantage of a particular event. And this is not to cast.
But they're not taking advantage of an event.
Yeah,
there were times where they weren't making that kind of money. I'm just wondering, do you pick and choose your event in your moment?
I think we tax in a time where there's an external event that's driving record profits, and that would be my argument here, and help provide relief. But I think the biggest thing the government ought to be doing is figuring out how do we buy some of this fuel at cheap prices and then sell back to the United States. I mean, I think the challenge is this. Look, I support Build Back Better. I support child care and prescription drugs and renewable energy. But let me just be blunt. That's not going to do anything tomorrow for the price of milk or the price of gas or the price of eggs. And what we have to figure out is how do we deal with those prices? That's what people are worried about. They're worried about the next week and those prices. And I think the president needs to try to do something on those issues.
All right, Congress, it's always a pleasure. You agree or disagree? You're very thoughtful about this. You have your constituents' interest at heart. And in this day and age where people shout and scream at each other, that is a rarity. Congressman Khanna, very good seeing you.
Always a pleasure.